Hi, this is Rob Warlow from Business Loan Services and welcome to my Friday Business Finance Bulletin, my weekly roundup of news, tips, ideas and strategies on raising finance and dealing with banks. So what have I got for you this week? Well, we're going to see what gifts the UK Chancellor had for UK small businesses this week in the autumn statement. We're also going to be looking at what else the government's doing to try and discourage late payment. And we're also going to see what banks are doing to try and improve the speed of security sharing amongst themselves with joint clients. And in my business tip of the week, well, a chat with Derek Arden, who is a top negotiator. And in this quick interview, Derek gives us 3 quick negotiation tips on how to get the very best deal from your bank. So let's start off with the Chancellor's autumn statement. Not a lot in it for UK small businesses, to be honest, but a few things that happened to be announced well before the budget. The first thing was the extension of the funding for lending scheme. It was due to expire in January 2015, but now been carried forward another year. Now, what was the funding for lending scheme? Well, it was brought out in 2012 at the height of the credit crunch, and it was really designed to try and encourage banks to lend more money to small businesses. So basically how it works, government has got a pot of money that it lends very cheaply to UK banks, and they are then supposed to on-lend it equally cheaply to UK small businesses. And the key word there was supposed to. Because to be honest with you, the scheme hasn't been a great success. As you will have picked up from previous bulletins, net lending to businesses continues to shrink most months. And so the banks who are dipping into that funding for lending scheme pot, they're not doing it very frequently. So it's not been a brilliant success. So I guess it was quite an easy decision for the Chancellor to extend it for another year. A bit more positively, the British Business Bank, which is the umbrella organisation that the government now have to house all of its schemes for UK small businesses, and was given another £400 million for its venture capital pot. Fair good news. Another £500 million was available for the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme. Now the EFG, if you recall from previous bulletins, you have a great idea, but the bank doesn't like it because of lack of security. Well, the government come in and give a guarantee to the bank that if they lose some money, they'll guarantee a portion of your debt. So another £500 million to support that scheme. Again, that scheme is not that well used. So overall, okay, a nice little thing thrown our way, but in the scheme of things, not that big. Now, late payment. Another thing that the government is trying to put their stamp of authority on is to try and get large businesses to pay up on time. Early this week, the government have announced a consultation period for some changes that it wants to make. And essentially, it wants to make quoted companies and very large businesses be more transparent on their payment terms. So they're expecting the larger business to say on what basis, how many of them are overdue, what their payment experience is as regards 30, 60, 90, 120 days. So essentially, be a lot more transparent on their payment record. Now, what's that mean for you? Well, the idea is that if you're going to enter into a contract with one of these large firms, you're able to go and look at the statistics and just see these guys are bad payers. From a business point of view, that's bad for my cash flow. It's not for me. So it's just designed as well to kind of name and shame. So as I say, it's a consultation paper that closes sometime in January 2015. So let's see if that comes into law. And it really kind of backs up some further work the government has done about putting a new prompt payment advisory board together to try and up the ante on late payment. So what about current experience about business owners getting finance? Well, I mentioned in last week's bulletin about the recent launch of the latest SME Finance Monitor Report, quarterly bulletin, an independent survey of what's going on out there. And some interesting reading again. And one of the things that showed that approval rates for applications put in by business owners is actually beginning to increase. So banks are beginning to say yes a lot more than they have done in the past. And one of the key stats that came out was 71% of new and renewal requests for overdrafts and loans are now being approved. And in fact, on just the renewal only, 99% of businesses are saying that when they ask for them, they're getting their facilities renewed with no problem. So that's all really good news. So it's about this key message I've said before: never make an assumption that you're going to get a no. Banks are beginning to open the purse strings a little bit more, but it's still quite tough. But don't just assume you're going to get a no and not go there. Now, let's assume that you've got a yes from the bank. Now, one thing that's always been a bugbear is if you've ended up with 2 bank accounts and you've got a loan from another bank and everyone's got to share the security pie. It's always been a bit difficult. So let's say you bank with Bank A, you've got overdraft facility which is secured by commercial premises, but you get a loan from Bank B, but they also want to share that security that Bank A have. Well, up until recently, it's been torturous to get the two banks to agree the process for sharing. It could take weeks and months, and in that stage, the business owner doesn't get the money. Well, the banks have recognised this, and so what they've agreed to do is to speed up the process, and they've agreed to turn it round now in 7 days in order to make sure that everybody can get very clear that the deeds of priority, as they are called, can be agreed, which means the facility can be dispersed. So that's good news about some cooperation to banks. I think they're probably realising they're getting a lot of competition from the crowdfunding and peer-to-peer sector. So this is their response to make sure that they can keep the business to themselves. So what about my business tip of the week? Well, I had an opportunity earlier in the week to have a chat with Derek Arden. Now, Derek was a career banker, and his last big job was with Barclays as one of their top negotiators dealing with the top 150 international clients. So Derek would be there negotiating the deals. So he's going to be the top negotiator. Today, he spends his time running seminars and workshops and provides one-on-one consultancy with business owners wanting to be better negotiators. Derek's also the chairman of the Professional Speaking Association, and earlier this week I had an opportunity to have a chat with Derek, and I asked him to share some tips that he'd had on how you can negotiate a better deal with your bank. So let's go to that clip now.
Well, when you're negotiating with a bank, the key issue is to have a plan. So you need to plan and prepare, what you're going to present to the bank, but also how you're going to negotiate. So the key thing is, if you've got these spreadsheets, your budget and cash flow forecasts, the things that the bank wants to see, then you're going to be putting yourself in a good position. I'd also talk to somebody who knows the local bank and how they react. The other thing is, when you're negotiating, if you've only got one option, guess what? You're going to get screwed on price. That applies with any negotiations at all. So it's a good idea to have two bank accounts. Now, whether you take one seriously or not, it doesn't matter. So, for example, I have an account with Barclays and I've got a dormantish account with Santander. That gives me two options. So I can wind the Santander bank manager up if I'm not going to get what I want from Barclays. I can't change my internet banking. Barclays know that. That would be too much hassle. But on the other hand, to have another option to go to makes the negotiations much easier. So generally I'd recommend you have three options, three banks to go to, but two's enough, two plus a financial advisor or somebody who helps you. And then when you go to the bank, you can say, well, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to somebody else. What deal can you do? That keeps people sharp, and you've got to keep people sharp in negotiation. The next thing I'd say is build rapport with the bank manager. Now, we don't really have bank managers these days. Sometimes it's a 25-year-old that looks 15, but we can't help that. And I was a bank manager myself, so I'm not being funny. Sometimes they don't know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing, then help them to get things through, because they've got to get it approved by the system, by the credit scoring, or by their head office. So as much as you can help them, build rapport, swap mobile phone numbers, etc., and have a great relationship. And then when they put the proposition up to HQ or whatever, help them with that, and if you come back with silly questions, answer them straight away, and just show people you really know what you're doing. So when you're negotiating with a bank or anybody else, you need three options. In a bank, it may be two, so that they're in competition. Number two, build rapport with the person that's trying to get it agreed. And number three, make sure you're always available to help them and show them that you really know what you're doing.
So there are some great tips from Derek there on what you can do to negotiate a better deal with your bank. If you want to know more about what Derek does, and also perhaps to sign up to his regular newsletter, which is a great read, just go along to his website. That's Derek Arden, Arden spelled ARDEN.co.uk. Follow him on Twitter, it's at Derek Arden, and you'll find lots of negotiating tips and hints there on what you can do to get a better deal. So that's it for this week. As ever, I hope you enjoyed this video and podcast. If you did, please feel free to share it amongst your colleagues and your friends. So that's it for this week. Have a great, successful and profitable week, and I look forward to being with you again next Friday. Bye-bye now.